You ruin good things not because you want to, but because part of you believes you don't deserve them. That belief hides behind logic, excuses, and timing. You say things like, "It wasn't the right moment," or "I just didn't feel ready." But the truth is simpler, darker, and harder to admit. You've built a behavioral system designed to sabotage peace because chaos feels familiar, calm feels suspicious, and stability, real, consistent stability, feels foreign to a mind that's been wired for survival instead of mastery. Every human has a behavioral magnet. It pulls us toward patterns, not promises. It seeks out repetition, not resolution. When something good enters your life, a relationship, an opportunity, a chance to change, your brain runs a silent scan. Is this familiar? If the answer is no, it resists. That's why we destroy what's good, not because it isn't working, but because it doesn't match the chaos we've learned to call home. You don't rise to your level of goals, you fall to your level of programming. That's the truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You can't outdream, outwork, or outpray your own conditioning, because your brain doesn't serve your ambitions. It serves your patterns. It doesn't care what you want. It only cares what's familiar. Every decision you make, every reaction you feel, every person you're drawn to, it all runs through one filter: what feels safe. And here's the catch. Your brain doesn't define safe as good. It defines safe as known. That means chaos can feel safe, dysfunction can feel normal, self-sabotage can feel comfortable. That's why people keep running back to the same pain in different faces, different jobs, different situations, because even destruction, when repeated long enough, becomes home. If you've ever wondered why you ruin good things, why you lose momentum just when you're winning, why peace feels boring and love feels suspicious, the answer is this: your nervous system hasn't been taught how to live in calm. It's addicted to crisis. The human brain is a predictive machine. It doesn't want happiness. It wants certainty. If chaos is predictable, your mind will chase it like oxygen. Reprogramming the familiar begins with awareness. And awareness is war, because you're not fighting an external enemy. You're fighting the invisible habits that make chaos feel like control. You must train yourself to pause before reacting. That pause is your weapon. In that space, you interrupt decades of automatic behavior. You override the old program. Here's how it works. When you start feeling anxious in a calm moment, when your mind begins to scan for what's wrong, when everything feels too quiet, don't rush to fill the silence. Don't call someone. Don't scroll. Don't distract yourself. Sit in the discomfort. You are retraining your nervous system to accept peace. You are teaching your body that calm does not mean danger, that silence does not mean threat, that being happy does not mean something bad is about to happen. The average person lives their entire life reacting to internal alarms that no longer apply. Someone raised in chaos becomes addicted to adrenaline. Someone used to rejection begins to seek it out subconsciously. Someone who grew up unseen will sabotage connection the moment it appears. Not because they don't want it, but because their system doesn't recognize it as home. You must rewire what home feels like. This isn't motivational talk. It's behavioral conditioning. Your thoughts follow your state. So when your state changes, your reality follows. To change the state, you change the environment of your nervous system. Breathe slower when your brain demands panic. Speak calmer when you want to yell. Stand taller when you want to hide. Each time you override the impulse, you send a signal to your brain. We're safe now. Repetition is the only language your brain understands. Not passion, not intention. Repetition. You can't meditate your way into transformation while living in the same loops. You reprogram through pattern interruption, through consistent exposure to new emotional territory until it becomes your baseline. This is why most people fail at transformation, because they confuse insight with change. Insight is knowing what's wrong. Change is training your body to behave differently when it happens again. If peace makes you restless, practice staying. If love makes you withdraw, practice leaning in. If success makes you uncomfortable, practice holding it. Every repetition of discomfort is a brick in your new foundation. Remember this, your old programming is a magnet. It will try to pull you back to the familiar, to people, habits, and thoughts that match your old identity. That's not weakness, that's physics. Magnets don't stop pulling just because you understand them. You must apply counterforce. The counterforce is awareness paired with deliberate action. Every moment you resist the familiar, you're weakening the magnetic pull of your past. And here's the turning point. When the unfamiliar becomes your new normal, the moment you realize peace no longer feels suspicious, when good things no longer feel temporary, when stability no longer feels like danger, that's when you know you've reprogrammed your system. You've built a new baseline. That's real transformation, not a mood, not motivation, but the quiet, unshakable control that comes from mastering your own internal chemistry. You want to know what true power looks like? It's not in dominance. It's not in success. It's not in who speaks loudest or looks strongest. Power is being calm in situations that once made you panic. Power is holding peace when chaos knocks on your door. Power is no longer being magnetically drawn to pain just because it feels familiar. When you can sit in peace and call it home, you've won, because that's when your brain finally stops surviving and starts obeying. Emotion is not a signal to act, it's a signal to analyze. Every powerful person you've ever admired, the soldier, the strategist, the negotiator, the leader, has one thing in common. They operate before emotion, not after it. They control the moment before the feeling takes over. That's where all influence lives. That's where your power begins. Most people believe emotion happens to them. It doesn't. Emotion is a sequence, a chain reaction between thought, interpretation, and physiology. But because the sequence happens in milliseconds, the untrained mind calls it instinct. You feel anger and say, I just snapped. You feel fear and say, I couldn't help it. But that's not truth. That's programming. What you call instinct is just a habit running faster than your awareness. The difference between the controlled and the controlled by is timing. The more time you create between the trigger and your reaction, the more power you gain. You can't stop emotion, but you can get ahead of it. That's the essence of behavioral control. Think of it this way. A trained sniper's power isn't in the rifle, it's in his patience, his ability to stay calm in chaos, to see movement without reacting to it. Emotion is movement. The untrained mind shoots at every flicker. The trained mind waits, breathes, observes, and strikes only when necessary. This is how psychological control is built, through deliberate awareness before emotion peaks. It's not about suppression, it's about sequence control. Suppression means emotion controls you. Sequence control means you control when it arrives. When someone insults you, you feel an internal surge, a spike in adrenaline. The body prepares for war. Your heart rate increases. Blood moves to the limbs. Your brain says, react. But the master doesn't. He breathes. He allows the chemistry to rise and fall without attaching a story to it. The power lies in observation. The mind says, I feel it, but I am not it. Once you separate feeling from identity, your reactions stop owning you. The moment you label yourself as your emotion, I am angry, I am sad, I am anxious, you surrender control. Those words are commands to your nervous system. Change the language and you change the brain's behavior. Say, I am experiencing anger. I am noticing anxiety. Language creates distance. Distance creates choice. Choice creates power. Control before you feel is not emotional numbness. It's emotional precision. It's the ability to decide which emotions serve the mission. The most dangerous person in any room is the one who can choose his state on command. When you can stay calm while others drown in reaction, you become magnetic. People start following your composure, not your words. Think about this in conflict. When two people argue, only one is in control. the one who can remain emotionally still. The loudest person is never the most powerful. The still one is. Stillness in the face of emotional attack is dominance, because while they burn energy expressing, you conserve energy analyzing. They move impulsively, you move intentionally. Control in silence is louder than emotion in volume. To train this, begin with awareness of your physiological tells, your micro signals. When tension rises, notice the breath, the tightening of the jaw, the shift in posture. Don't rush to fix it, just watch. You're learning your internal map. Every reaction has a pattern. Learn it like a language. Once you recognize the first word, you can rewrite the sentence before it finishes. Here's a truth most people will never understand. Mastery begins at the microsecond level. Every second between feeling and action is a battlefield. The weak mind fires first. The disciplined mind delays. The delay is not hesitation, it's control. Every pause rewires your brain's operating system to prioritize observation over impulse. You become unshakable when your internal state no longer depends on external chaos. That's when people start feeling something around you they can't explain. Presence. Presence isn't about charisma or confidence. It's the gravitational field of someone who's mastered sequence control. Others sense it. They unconsciously adjust their behavior around it. That's influence at the behavioral level. To control before you feel means to dominate the invisible, the neural signals, the chemistry, the micro expressions that drive your life. It's being the calmest person in the storm because you built yourself that way, one reaction at a time. The untrained person reacts. The trained one chooses. The untrained one explains their emotions. The trained one directs them. The untrained one gets pulled by chemistry. The trained one uses chemistry as leverage. Start now. When the next trigger hits, pause, one breath, one full second of stillness. That's the gap where power is born. It will feel unnatural at first because your brain wants to finish the pattern, but each time you resist, you weaken the chain. Control before you feel and you control everything after, because no external force can manipulate a person who governs his internal state. That is real power. Not the kind that shouts, the kind that commands silence, the kind that doesn't flinch when the world pushes, the kind that moves not from emotion, but from precision. Every failure in your life started with a negotiation, a conversation between you and your weakness, and you lost. Weakness never demands all at once. It whispers. It offers reasonable options. It disguises itself as self-care, balance, or patience. It says, you deserve a break. It says, you'll do it tomorrow. And each time you listen, your brain learns something dangerous, that your weakness has authority. Every time you delay, justify, or excuse, you're sending a behavioral command to your subconscious. My comfort matters more than my mission. And the subconscious obeys. It builds patterns around that instruction until hesitation becomes your baseline. You stop deciding based on goals and start deciding based on mood. That's the quiet death of discipline. Weakness doesn't arrive with alarms. It creeps in during the small decisions, the ones that feel insignificant. The extra 5 minutes in bed, the skipped workout, the task you delay because it's not urgent. But those moments are the training ground of your identity. Every small concession compounds into a mindset that breaks under pressure, because the way you do one thing, the way you allow one thing, becomes the model for everything else. You can't conquer life when you keep signing peace treaties with your own excuses. Power doesn't come from motivation. Power comes from refusal, the refusal to negotiate with anything that threatens your standard. Let's be clear. Weakness is not a flaw, it's a voice, and that voice only has power if you respond. The more you debate with it, the more influence it gains. You cannot rationalize weakness away because reasoning is its language. You kill it with silence, with immediate action, with movement so decisive that your brain learns. This person doesn't bargain. Think about it. The most dangerous people in any domain, from military to business to psychology, share one trait: they make decisions without emotional debate. Their internal rule is absolute. When it's time, it's done. No feelings, no hesitation, no vote. That's how you must begin training your mind, like a soldier following orders from the highest version of yourself. When your weakness says, "You don't feel like it," you reply with, "I didn't ask." You operate on command, not comfort. Because once you start obeying your emotions, you become their subordinate. Weakness will always present the easy path. The brain is wired to conserve energy, avoid pain, and seek pleasure, a perfect formula for mediocrity. But the human being is not meant to stay comfortable. Growth requires controlled discomfort. Every time you override the instinct for ease, you're reprogramming your biology for strength. Here's a psychological fact. The brain builds identity through repetition of action, not through self-talk. You can affirm your strength all day, but if your actions contradict your words, your subconscious records weakness as truth. Every time you act despite resistance, the mind rewrites its definition of who you are. This is how warriors are built, not through hype, but through repetition of obedience to difficult things. Stop treating your feelings as commands. They are signals, not orders. Discipline is the ability to hear the emotion, acknowledge it, and act in alignment with mission instead of mood. You cannot lead your life and follow your emotions at the same time. One must command, the other must obey. Let me tell you what most people never learn. Every act of discipline is not just a behavior. It's communication with your subconscious. When you push through the workout, complete the project, hold your composure, or stay focused despite distraction, you're not just succeeding in that moment. You're teaching your brain, "I'm the one in charge now." That's power training at the neurological level. Weakness thrives in comfort. It feeds on delay, but it dies in motion. Every time you act immediately, you starve it. You send a clear message to your nervous system. This command center no longer negotiates. This is not about being harsh. It's about reclaiming authority over your own system. Your mind and body are tools. They are not your leaders. The untrained person obeys impulses. The trained one directs them. The untrained person reacts to mood. The trained one moves by command. The moment you stop negotiating with weakness, your entire identity shifts. People around you feel it. They sense that you've become someone who no longer hesitates. There's gravity in that. Presence. Influence. Because strength isn't something you show. It's something you emit. You want power? You want peace? Then stop arguing with the part of you that prefers comfort over growth. That voice will never disappear, but its authority can be stripped the moment you stop giving it attention. The next time you feel yourself hesitating, remember this: weakness doesn't fear motivation, it fears decision. One decisive act of discipline silences 1,000 excuses. So when that inner voice whispers again, when it tells you to rest, delay, or wait for the right time, don't respond, move, act. Execute, because hesitation is weakness oxygen, and the moment you stop negotiating, you cut off its air supply. You will never rise above the identity you hold in your mind. No matter how skilled, intelligent, or motivated you become, your behavior will always fall to match who you believe you are. Identity is the command center of human behavior. It decides how much success you tolerate, how much peace you can hold, how much love you accept, and how much pressure you can endure before you break. You don't lose discipline because you lack willpower. You lose it because your behavior outran your identity. When your actions stretch beyond what you subconsciously believe you deserve, your mind begins the sabotage sequence. It finds ways to pull you back into alignment with who you think you are. That's why people keep falling into the same patterns, because their identity hasn't upgraded with their goals. You can change your environment, your friends, your income, even your appearance, But if your internal definition of you doesn't evolve, your life will always reorganize itself to match your self-image. The mind's first priority is not growth, it's consistency. It would rather you live in predictable misery than unpredictable success, because predictable means safe, and safe means survival. So the moment you begin stepping outside that identity boundary, your brain deploys psychological resistance, procrastination, doubt, overthinking, and emotional exhaustion. You think you're tired, you're not, you're misaligned. Building an unshakable identity begins with one truth: you are not your emotions, your history, or your circumstances. You are the system that commands them. But if you never learn to take control of that system, it will default to the patterns it learned when you were weakest. Your identity was not chosen by you, it was conditioned into you. Every word you heard, every reaction you copied, every belief you accepted without question built the model your brain uses to interpret reality. That model is still running, unless you interrupt it. And that interruption begins when you stop identifying with your current state and start identifying with your desired standard. Here's how psychological transformation truly works. You don't wait until you feel like the new version of you. You act like it until the brain accepts it as fact. The subconscious mind doesn't care about truth. It only cares about repetition. It believes whatever it sees the most. So when you start behaving like the stronger, calmer, more disciplined version of yourself consistently, your brain begins to rewire its understanding of who you are. This is why consistency is more powerful than intensity. Anyone can act powerful for a day, but it's repetition that convinces the nervous system. You must perform your new identity under stress, under fatigue, under doubt, until it becomes reflex. You're not training behavior. You're training your automatic responses. Imagine a soldier who only performs well in training, but collapses in combat. That's most people. They're only strong when life is easy, but identity is tested in resistance. The battlefield moments, when you're rejected, overlooked, or under pressure, that's where your self-image either crumbles or solidifies. Those are the psychological proving grounds. An unshakable identity is not about confidence. It's about certainty. Confidence can be faked. Certainty cannot. Confidence is an emotion. Certainty is a state. It's what happens when your nervous system knows who you are, even when everything around you is uncertain. When you carry that kind of internal certainty, you stop chasing validation. You stop reacting to criticism. You stop explaining yourself to people who haven't earned your explanation. You move differently. You speak slower. You decide faster. You become the authority in every room because you don't need to prove anything. To build that kind of identity, you must feed it evidence daily, not affirmations, evidence. The brain doesn't obey words, it obeys proof. Each disciplined act, each controlled reaction, each moment you choose strength over emotion, those are neural votes. Every time you execute despite fear, your brain updates its definition of you. This person acts under pressure. This person doesn't fold. Over time, those votes become law. You cannot build power while identifying as weak. You cannot hold peace while identifying as chaotic. You cannot lead while identifying as uncertain. The identity must precede the result. So here's your assignment. Write down the person you want to become, not in fantasy, but in detail. How does that person think, move, react, and decide? Then train yourself to behave like them before you feel like them. When you act beyond your current identity, you're sending a new command to your subconscious. Update required. And it will update if you're consistent enough. Understand this. Every action is a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. You're casting votes every hour with your habits, your thoughts, your discipline, and your silence. The question is not, who do I want to be? The question is, What am I voting for today? The day your actions and your identity finally align, the day your brain no longer argues with your greatness, that's the day you become unstoppable. That's the day you stop chasing confidence and start emitting power. Because when your identity becomes unshakable, no storm can move you. You no longer adapt to chaos, chaos adapts to you. And that's when you've built what few ever will, a mind that obeys its master. You were never cursed with chaos, you were conditioned for it. The power to end that conditioning sits in one place, your next decision. Every time you choose discipline over emotion, calm over reaction, control over comfort, you're breaking the magnetic pull of your old self. So, when life gives you something good again, don't flinch, don't doubt it, stand still in the discomfort of stability, train your nervous system to hold the peace it once feared. Because power isn't built in what you chase, it's built in what you can keep. And when you can finally keep what's good, that's when the world knows you've mastered yourself.